And thanks very much. Thanks very much, Charles, for inviting me to Newcastle. I've got many colleagues and friends here in the audience, and hope to meet more of you afterwards. I'd also like to thank Mark for teaching me about courage and compassion. It's great to learn from your son. I think you should go online or go to a bookshop and buy his book, The Undesirables, if you haven't. Unfortunately, we weren't able to bring them with us because the delivery of books arrived about an hour after we left Sydney. But Thomas CUEHL, when he reviewed Mark's book, described him as a bewildered pilgrim, describing his experiences, and it's an amazing book to read. And I'm not in the least bit biased, of course. And I'd also like a particular thank you to the member of the audience who asked me if I was Mark's brother. That's the way to make friends. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you, I'm not a religious man, but I'm going to talk to you about the parable of the Good Samaritan and what it teaches us about asylum seekers. So you all know the parable of the Good Samaritan, or you think you do. I thought I did and had to go to Wikipedia to find out a little bit more about it. So this is the dangerous road from Jerusalem to Jericho. It was known as the Way of Blood because there were so many bandits waiting to ambush you. And a Jew decided to take that road alone, and the parable of the Good Samaritan has been illustrated in this beautiful stained glass window in France, this Dutch 17th century painting. And the parable, it's said that Jesus said that one should love thy neighbour as thyself. And someone asked him, well, who's my neighbour? And so he then told the parable of the Good Samaritan, that there was a traveller who may have been a Jew, was beaten, robbed, left half dead on the side of the road, and a priest came, and then a Levite, that's a Jewish man from the tribe of Leviticus, and they both avoided the man who'd been beaten. And they probably thought, what might happen to me if I stopped to help? And then a Samaritan came along and helped. And he was thinking, what might happen to this man if I leave him here in danger? So an interesting parable. And here's Rembrandt taking up the same parable, the beautiful lighting on the man's back, and of the horse, so characteristic of Rembrandt's painting. Okay, now, I was fascinated by this because came to reading about this through some research I was doing, and I read a philosopher called Nancy Jecker. And she was talking about this and saying, well, what do we owe to people who are in danger? She said the Samaritan is described in the Bible as good, but the Levite and the priest aren't described as bad. The Samaritan just put the others just put self-interest before personal safety. And I came to this because I was thinking about the rule of rescue in drugs. Should we pay a huge amount of money at the end of life for expensive drugs? And Al Johnson, another philosopher, said that the rule of rescue is a compulsion more instinctive than rational. So in a way, this Samaritan is showing incredible courage, more instinctive than rational. So Nancy Jecker argued that there was no absolute moral obligation to the Jew, but that proximity was an important aspect here, both physical and emotional proximity to the person who's been hurt or is in danger. So let's think about asylum seekers and what should be happening here. This is a famous ship, the MS St. Louis, and it's a picture of it in Hamburg. And it's just leaving Hamburg, and on it are 937 German Jewish refugees. So we're just before the start of World War II, in 1939. It was called the Voyage of the Damned. The captain, Gustav Schröder, tried to find homes for those German Jewish refugees, and the boat was denied entry to Cuba, then the USA, then Canada, and was returned to Europe. And about a quarter of the people on that boat, men, women and children, are estimated to have died in concentration camps. And so society's attitude to asylum seekers, that we have a moral obligation to them, is largely based on this, as many of our ideas about human rights are, on what happened in World War II. So let's think here about the concept of home. So the Samaritan was thinking about giving the Jew a home, and MS St. Louis were thinking about giving the Jews a home. The Samaritan took the Jew into his home to succour him, but didn't give him a home permanently there. He helped him and then let him move on. So if we allow some or all asylum seekers to settle in our country, we're providing a home for them, but they're not actually coming into our own home, our personal home. And yet that's what the government is pretending. They act as if they are invading our own home. On top of this, there's this peculiar Australian fear of boat arrivals. As Mark said, if someone arrives by plane, we don't treat them like that. So what is it about boats that we're so scared of? This is Nauru. Interestingly, I gave a version of what I'm saying today at an ethics meeting just last week. And someone in the audience, actually the organiser of the whole meeting down there, asked me a question at the end and said, so should we try to help asylum seekers, or is that colluding with government policy, an unethical government policy? Which was quite a curly question. And I've actually been invited to go to Nauru by the International Health and Medical Services to try and help children on Nauru with the same constraints as Mark has about being allowed to speak out about it. So I had to come make the ethical decision myself, and life is full of ethical decisions. I had to make the ethical decision myself. Should I go to try and help children in trouble on Nauru with health problems, knowing that I would be constrained, and knowing that constrained about what I would say, and knowing that to an extent that meant I was colluding with the government? And that was something that Mark kept worrying about. Was he colluding by being there, or was he honestly trying to help, or were the two clashing with each other to an extent? So that's Nauru. And this is probably why we're so scared about boat people, because we were the original boat people. We, the whites, and unless there are any indigenous people in the audience, we, the whites, were the ones who came here by boat and invaded someone else's land. So is it the guilt of the dispossessors that we are so concerned about other people coming by boat? Surely if someone makes the autonomous choice to come by boat because they're petrified about what's happening in another country, we shouldn't say we're going to punish them so severely as to prevent them wanting to come to this country. It seems very poor morality. So do we have a moral obligation to asylum seekers? I believe we have an internationally accepted moral obligation to treat them with respect. Maybe they aren't true asylum seekers or true refugees. They may be coming for economic reasons. Okay, but we have a moral obligation to treat them with respect until we decide that. What is unacceptable, as Marcus said, is indefinite detention, the no timetable, the no appeal until they're processed. If this government doesn't process people, as I heard Gillian Triggs say recently, there's no appeal. You can't appeal about something that's not happened. So they're left in an absolute limbo. Dr. Peter Young, the chief immigration psychiatrist, described this as torture. He said this is deliberate harm to coerce someone into a desired position. That's the definition of torture. And if you accept that as the definition, then we are torturing people who've come asking for our mercy. The other thing is this idea of refoulement, returning someone to danger, which we've seen about to be done to the recent boat arrivals. And that is an absolute no-no in international terms. So I'm going to conclude in this little segment by saying we should behave to asylum seekers more the way the Good Samaritan would have done. That's not the end of my talk yet. You don't get away so easily. I'm going to talk to you a little about a paediatrician, like several paediatricians in this audience, and I'm going to talk to you particularly about children in detention and children on the island, in fact on Christmas Island, because Gillian Triggs is not allowed to go to Nauru or to Manus Island. So she's the director of the
Human
yes,
Rights
the Australian
Commission.
Human Rights Commission, but she's the, I'm trying to think of her, President, thanks Mark. She's the President of the Australian Human Rights Commission, and she's been allowed to go to Christmas Island, finally, although interestingly, to go to Christmas Island you need a passport. Okay, although it's sort of part of WA, but it's been excised from the mainland, but still she's been able to go there. She can go anywhere within Australia, but she's not allowed to go to Manus Island or Nauru. So it's only through people like Mark and a few other people, Amnesty and so on, that we're able to find out what happens on Nauru. Okay, so Gillian Triggs went to Christmas Island, and these are some of the drawings that were done by children. You can see the shark in the water, the fear on the face of the people on the boat in this picture. These were children, the waves, yes. These are children on Christmas Island doing drawings, and a paediatrician, Karen Zwee, and a psychiatrist, Sarah Mayers, took crayons along with them and paper to get the children to do their drawings. And you'll see some of the drawings, the children which are eloquent in what these children feel. They're all frowning, rain is pouring down. This child's shown happy children on one side and her on the other side, and the horrible stark contrast between those. This is a 9-year-old. This one's done by a child in Operation Art in our hospital, just in contrast. That's what a happy child draws. Ellie eating her lunch. This is a child saying they can't go to school on Christmas Island.